My husband proudly surprised our son with a brand new PlayStation after I'd reluctantly sold the old one to cover the thousands in cleaning fees he'd racked up trashing our home. When I gently asked why he'd replaced it without talking, "To me," he snapped, "you went behind my back," and stormed off. I said nothing. 3 months passed in strained silence, until yesterday, when he casually opened Trevor's laptop and froze, his face draining of color in a way I'll never forget. When I met Daman, it felt like fireworks were going off in my entire body. He was exactly the kind of man I'd been manifesting since I was a teenager, so I was ready to work through any problem that came our way. Except one. His stepson, Trevor. I trusted that Daman would understand if I ever brought it up, but I wanted to handle things on my own first. Still, nothing I did ever seemed to help, because honestly, Trevor was a complete man-child. At 22, he was still living with Daman, unemployed, with zero plans for his future. One Saturday, I spent 4 hours making 3 homemade pizzas, for each of us. By the time we finished eating, I was totally wiped out. Naturally, I asked Daman and Trevor if they could handle the cleanup. It was a big mess, and it needed more than one person. "Of course, beautiful," Daman said. But half an hour later, when everything should have been spotless, I still heard dishes clanking around. I went downstairs, and there was Trevor, lounging on the couch, legs wide, puffing on his e-cigarette like he had all the time in the world. I asked calmly why he wasn't helping his dad. And his reaction? It was like a toddler being told they couldn't have a cookie. He jumped up, stomped his foot, and snapped, "Don't tell me what to do," before storming up the stairs. Daman came rushing in. "You're my wife, not his mother. Don't let this happen again." But that was just one moment in a long list of entitled behavior. Trevor's 24 now, and things have only gotten worse. Eventually, I couldn't keep ignoring it, and I brought it up to Daman. His go-to response? "He's an adult. If you don't like how he lives, just ignore him." Then it turned into, "You're always complaining about him." As you can imagine, our relationship really started to feel the strain, especially after I moved in with them. But 2 weeks ago, whatever we had left completely fell apart. I had just come home from working a double shift, only to be met with Daman and Trevor staging some kind of intervention. "You're not pulling your weight in this house," Daman said, "and it's putting stress on Trevor." I stared at him, trying not to laugh. He went on, "You should be helping clean Trevor's room with me, not just the shared spaces." I honestly thought I was being pranked. I looked at Trevor and asked if, in exchange, he'd be willing to, I don't know, get a job? Any job? And with a totally straight face, he said, "Would you ask a newborn baby to pay you for feeding them?" Exactly. He said he shouldn't. Have to earn the basic necessities of life. I saw red. He knew I'd just had a miscarriage. He knew I'd been told I was infertile. And when I looked at Daman, he just sat there, arms crossed, nodding along. I knew if I stayed in that room, I'd do something I'd regret. So I went out for a walk. Over the next week, Daman and I basically became roommates. Then yesterday evening, Trevor wasn't home and I had the day off, so I decided to clean the entire house. I know that sounds odd, but honestly, I love cleaning. It calms me. I wiped windows, polished floors, dusted door frames, even lint-rolled the lampshades. I felt like Monica from Friends. And afterward, I basked in that clean house glow. I felt like a princess. Aside from being woken at 4 a.m. by Trevor slamming the front door, I slept like one too. But the next morning, the whole house reeked, like someone had smeared cow dung on every wall. When I got up to investigate, I found out why. There were piles of filthy laundry everywhere. The stench had made its way upstairs. There was spilled hot sauce, an open tin of tuna, moldy sour cream smells, even stale gum stuck to the mantel. I screamed and ran to wake up Daman. He gagged the second he smelled it and immediately took the blame. Yeah, that was me. I drank too much last night, took things too far. I just stared at him. He tried to stop me from going into Trevor's room, but he couldn't. And when we opened the door, we were hit with the full blast of weed. I didn't say a word. Daman just sighed and left the room. As soon as he was gone, I walked back in, grabbed Trevor's gaming console, the one I paid half for, and sold it. Later that day, Trevor woke up to the sound of a maid vacuuming his room. He smirked and gave me a sarcastic thank you, thinking he'd somehow won. Then he found out how I paid for the cleaning crew, and he wasn't smiling anymore. It was about time. I just nodded and went to make coffee. I was physically and emotionally drained, but I also felt this strange new energy, like something had finally clicked. Trevor's smugness lasted all of 47 minutes. One of the cleaners asked him to move his setup so they could vacuum underneath it. "Where's my Xbox?" he practically screamed. I heard him stomping around, tossing stuff, looking under furniture before he burst into the kitchen. I was sitting there, calmly sipping coffee and reading a book. "Where is it?" His face was beet red. "Where's what?" I asked casually. "My Xbox. It's gone." I took another sip before replying. Oh, that. I sold it. His jaw literally dropped. You what? I sold it to pay for the cleaning crew. They're not cheap, you know. He started sputtering about how I had no right, how it was his property. That's when I dropped the hammer. Actually, I paid for half of it. And since you wrecked a house I also pay half for, I thought it was a fair trade. He stormed off, frantically calling Daman. I knew what was coming, but this time, I didn't care. I finished my coffee and waited. 20 minutes later, Daman came bursting through the front door like someone had lit a fire under him. The cleaners were still working, moving around him as he stood in the entryway, taking it all in. What have you done? He demanded, looking at me like I'd committed some awful crime. I calmly explained that Trevor had trashed the house I'd spent hours cleaning, so I sold the console I'd helped pay for to cover professional cleaners. Logical consequence, right? Daman didn't see it that way. He ranted about how I had no right. How Trevor was heartbroken, how I should have come to him first. The usual excuses for Trevor's unacceptable behavior. I let him get it all out. When he finally stopped, I just said, I'm going to my sister's for a few days. I need space. That stopped him cold. In 3 years, no matter how bad the arguments got, I'd never once said I was leaving. I was always the one trying to fix things, to compromise. You're being dramatic, he said, but I saw the panic in his eyes. I went upstairs to pack while Daman followed me around, his tone shifting from angry to pleading. I didn't respond. I just kept packing. When I was done, I walked past Trevor's room. He was sulking on his bed, glaring at his phone. Enjoy your clean room, I said. I walked out and stayed at my sister Jen's apartment for 5 days. 5 days of dodging Daman's texts and calls, some apologizing, some blaming me, and then swinging back again. 5 days of Jen reminding me I deserved better while I cried, into wine glasses wondering when my life had turned into this train wreck. On day 3, Trevor started texting me. That came out of nowhere. At first, he was furious about the Xbox. Then his messages got weird. He actually accused me of trying to ruin his relationship with his dad, that I was jealous of their bond. It was so ridiculous, I showed Jen, and we laughed until we cried. By day 5, Daman showed up at Jen's door with flowers and an apology. That sounded like he'd practiced it in the mirror. I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop, neutral ground. He launched into all the usual lines. He missed me, the house wasn't the same. He was sorry things got out of hand. Then he got to what he really came to say. Trevor feels terrible about what happened, he told me, though I seriously doubted that. He wants to make it up to you. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, right. He's going to start looking for a job, Daman continued, and he'll keep his room clean from now on. Same old promises. I stirred my latte and looked him straight in the eye. I need more than words this time, I said. I need real change. We negotiated for almost 2 hours. By the end of it, we basically had a contract. Trevor had to apply to at least 3 jobs a week, help out with chores, and most importantly, Daman would stop undermining me when I asked Trevor to act like an adult. I moved back in the next day. Things were tense, but Trevor was oddly civil. He even showed me job listings he'd found online. I felt cautiously hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, my dramatic exit had been the wake-up call they both needed. That hope lasted exactly 8 days. I came home from work and found Trevor and 3 of his friends sprawled across the living room, playing video games on a brand new PlayStation 5, one even more expensive than the Xbox I had sold. Empty pizza boxes and beer cans were everywhere. His friends scattered the moment I walked in. Trevor didn't even flinch. Dad got it for me, he said, eyes still on the screen. To replace the one you stole. I felt like I'd been punched. I waited until Daman got home and confronted him in our bedroom. You bought him another console, after everything we agreed on? Daman wouldn't look at me. He was really upset about losing the Xbox. I thought this might help smooth things over. Smooth things over? You completely undermined me. Again. We argued for hours. Same old loop. But this time I didn't back down. I told him he had to make a choice. Either start parenting Trevor like the adult he was, or I was out. You're asking me to choose between my son and my wife, he said, clearly hurt. No, I replied. I'm asking you to be a parent so you don't lose your wife. He didn't have an answer. We went to bed angry, backs turned. The next morning, he left early without saying goodbye. That evening, I came home to find Trevor sitting at the kitchen table filling out a job application for the grocery store, down the street. I was skeptical, but tried to stay supportive. That's great, Trevor. They're usually hiring. He grunted and kept writing. Later, Daman told me he'd had a serious talk with Trevor about responsibility. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But after everything, I was guarded. 2 days later, Trevor actually went to an interview. He didn't get the job, but hey, it was something. The following week, he applied to 3 more places. He kept his mess contained to his room. He even washed his own dishes once or twice. I started thinking, maybe we'd finally turned a corner. Then I found the hidden camera in our bedroom. I was dusting the bookshelf when I noticed something off about our clock radio. There was a tiny pinhole that hadn't been there before. I picked it up, examined it closely. This wasn't our usual clock. It was a hidden camera, disguised as a clock. My stomach dropped. I searched the house, found another one hidden inside an air freshener in the main bathroom. My hands were shaking with rage by the time Daman got home. I shoved the clock at him. "What the hell is this?" He looked baffled. "Our clock?" I snapped. "Look closer, it's a camera. Someone's been filming us, in our bedroom." His face went pale. He checked the clock, then the air freshener. "I don't understand. Who would—" The answer was obvious. Trevor. But Daman immediately got defensive. "That's ridiculous. Why would he do that?" "I don't know, Daman. Maybe because he's a creep? Maybe to blackmail us? Maybe because he hates me and wants something to use against me?" We were still arguing when Trevor came home. Daman showed him the cameras. Trevor acted shocked, denied everything, even suggested I planted them to frame him. That kicked off another huge fight. Daman caught in the middle, not sure who to believe. And I couldn't believe he wasn't siding with me. We were talking about cameras in our bedroom. And he still wasn't sure? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those cameras. How long had they been there? What had they recorded? Around 2 a.m., I went downstairs for water. As I passed Trevor's room, I heard him on the phone. "Yeah, she found them. No, Dad has no idea. Of course he believed me. He always does." He laughed. The look on her face when I said maybe she planted them? Priceless. I froze. My heart pounded as I tiptoed back upstairs and woke Daman, told him what I'd heard. At first he thought I was dreaming, but I convinced him to listen for himself. We went to Trevor's door. He was still on the phone, laughing, bragging about how he could manipulate his dad. For the first time, I saw real anger in Daman's eyes. He pushed the door open. Trevor's face when he saw us, I wish I'd taken a picture. He tried to backpedal, saying I must have misheard. Daman stayed silent, raised a hand to stop him, then turned and walked out. I followed, unsure what to expect. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I should have believed you." It was something, but not enough. Not after years of this. I told him I needed real action. The next morning, Daman told Trevor he had 30 days to get a job and start saving to move out. Trevor exploded, accusing me of turning his dad against him. But for once, Daman didn't budge. "The cameras were the last straw," he said. I wanted to believe it was finally happening, that this was the change we'd been waiting for. And surprisingly, Daman stood firm. He helped Trevor make a resume, took him shopping for interview clothes. He finally started acting like a parent. Trevor, on the other hand, was livid. He ignored me whenever Daman wasn't around, made snide little comments about how I'd regret this. I told Daman, but he brushed it off as Trevor just working through his feelings. 2 weeks after the camera discovery, Trevor got a job at a warehouse. Full-time, benefits. Daman was thrilled. I wasn't. Something about Trevor's sudden cooperation felt wrong. That feeling was confirmed when I came home early from work one day with a migraine. As I walked in, I heard Trevor in the kitchen, talking to a friend. "She actually thinks I'm gonna move out," he laughed. "Dad'll never let that happen. I just have to play along until she gives up and leaves." His friend asked what if I didn't leave. "Then I'll make her," Trevor said, suddenly serious. "I've got more dirt on her than she knows." I slipped back outside and sat in my car, stunned. What dirt could he have? Unless the cameras. Had they been recording longer than I thought? Long enough to catch something he could twist? The next day, I called in sick, waited until they were both gone. Then I tore through Trevor's room. I found a locked box under his bed. The key was taped to the bottom of his desk drawer. Not exactly a mastermind. Inside were flash drives, labeled with dates going back 6 months. I took them to Jen's place to watch them safely. What I found made me sick. Hours of video from our bedroom and bathroom, private conversations between Daman and me, moments no one should have seen, and even worse, edited clips. Trevor had cut and spliced them to make it look like I was saying horrible things about Daman or hiding things from him. I copied everything onto my own drive as evidence, then put the originals back so he wouldn't know I'd seen them. I didn't know what to do next. If I showed Daman, would he finally see the truth, or accuse me of invading Trevor's privacy? I carried that flash drive with me everywhere, completely paralyzed by indecision, until Trevor made the decision for me. I came home from work one day to find Daman sitting on the couch, looking devastated. When I asked what was wrong, he just handed me his phone. On the screen was a video of me, pieced together from hidden camera footage. The way it was edited made it sound like I was planning to leave Daman, saying I couldn't stand him anymore. "Trevor found this on your laptop," Daman said, his voice empty. Trevor had borrowed my laptop to apply for jobs. I hadn't even realized he'd touched it. He must have planted the video there. That's not real, I said urgently. It's edited. Footage from the cameras he put in our room. Daman looked unsure. Why would he do that? That's when I pulled out my flash drive and showed him everything. The original footage, the manipulated clips, all of it. As he watched, his expression changed from doubt to shock to fury. I'm going to talk to him, Daman said when he was done. No, I replied firmly. We talked to him, together. When Trevor got home, we were waiting. The moment he saw our faces, he knew something was up. Before Daman could say a word, I held up the flash drive. We saw everything, Trevor. The raw footage, your edits, all of it. His expression flickered, through surprise, then anger, then calculation, and finally landed on fake confusion. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said. Daman cut him off. Stop lying. I saw it. The cameras, the edits, you trying to frame my wife. Trevor's act changed instantly. He burst into tears, claiming he was just trying to protect his dad from me. Said he'd overheard me talking about leaving and freaked out. His performance was actually decent. If I hadn't heard him laughing about his plan with a friend, I might have fallen for it. But Daman wasn't buying it this time. Pack your stuff, he said quietly. You're moving out tonight. Trevor's tears vanished. His face hardened as he looked at me. This isn't over, he said. You'll regret this. He stormed upstairs to pack. Meanwhile, Daman called his uncle to arrange a place for Trevor to stay. I sat on the couch, emotionally drained but feeling lighter. After years of manipulation, Daman finally saw the truth. Later that night, after Trevor had left, Daman and I sat and talked for hours. He apologized again and again for not believing. Me for enabling Trevor, for risking our marriage. I was still hurt, but also relieved. Maybe now we had a real shot at healing. I'm starting therapy, Daman said. I need to understand why I let this go on for so long. We went to bed that night closer than we'd been in months. As I drifted off to sleep, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could fix things. But the next morning, I woke up to frantic knocking at our front door. It was 6 a.m. When I looked out the window, there were police cars in the driveway. My heart nearly stopped. I shook Daman awake, and we rushed downstairs. When we opened the door, 2 officers asked if they could come in. They told us Trevor had filed a report, accusing me of assaulting him the night before he left. That's ridiculous, Daman said right away. She was with me the entire time. Nothing like that happened. The officers asked if we had proof. Then I remembered. The new security system we installed after finding Trevor's hidden cameras. It covered the entryway and living room. I pulled up the footage on my phone, showing Trevor calmly leaving the house with his uncle. No confrontation, no assault. The officers looked relieved. They explained that Trevor had shown up at the station, with a bruised face, claiming I hit him when Daman wasn't looking. The video made it obvious he was lying. After they left, Daman called his uncle. Turns out Trevor had punched himself in the face after getting to his uncle's house, then waited until morning to file the report. His uncle tried to stop him, but Trevor stormed out. This has to stop, Daman said, hanging up. He needs help, but I can't let him destroy our marriage anymore. He called Trevor and told him to meet us at a restaurant later that afternoon. A public place, with witnesses. When Trevor showed up, his face was bruised, but not as badly as I'd feared. He sat down, glaring at me. Daman got right to the point. The police showed us your complaint. We showed them our security footage. They know you lied. Trevor started to argue, but Daman cut him off again. I'm getting you help, whether you want it or not. You've got 2 choices. Go to therapy, get a job, start working through your issues, or you're on your own. No money, no support, nothing. Trevor looked stunned. It was the first time Daman had given him a real ultimatum, with actual consequences. You're choosing her over me? He asked, his voice small. No, Daman said. I'm choosing what's best for you, even if you can't see it. And I'm choosing my marriage. Something I've neglected for way too long. Trevor stormed out, leaving his food untouched. Daman and I sat in silence for a moment. Do you think he'll go to therapy? I asked. Daman sighed. I don't know. But for the first time, I'm not chasing after him. He has to make that choice. For the next 3 days, we didn't hear a word from Trevor. Daman tried calling, but it just went to voicemail. His uncle confirmed he was still staying there, mostly, holed up in the spare room, refusing to talk about therapy or work or anything. Part of me felt relieved, but I also kept watching my back, half expecting him to pop up with some new drama. Daman was quiet during those days, not angrily quiet, just thoughtful. I caught him a few times looking at old photos of Trevor as a kid. He made his first therapy appointment, and even asked if I'd come with him to one. That meant a lot. On the 4th day after the restaurant meeting, I came home from a brutal shift at the hospital and found Daman sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of him. What's all this? I asked, dropping my bag. Trevor's baby photos, school records, Old birthday cards. He handed me one, a handmade card in crayon that said, "Happy birthday, Dad." I've been trying to figure out where I went wrong. I sat down beside him. You didn't go wrong by loving him, Daman. No, but I went wrong somewhere. He gathered the papers into a messy pile. My therapist says I've been trying to make up for Jen's death by not setting boundaries with Trevor. Like if I could just be the perfect dad, it would fix everything. I didn't know what to say. It made sense. But hearing him finally admit it hit hard. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Just then, the doorbell rang. We looked at each other. Neither of us was expecting anyone. It was Karma, Trevor's uncle's wife. She stood on our porch looking seriously frazzled, holding a giant tote bag. Her hair was a mess like she'd been running her hands through it nonstop. Sorry to show up unannounced, she said. Trevor left this morning. Charles is freaking out, but he left this behind. She hoisted the bag onto our kitchen table. Inside was Trevor's laptop, a bunch of flash drives like the one I had, and notebooks filled with journal entries. Daman opened the laptop. Should we even be looking at this? I asked, feeling uncomfortable. Charles already did, Karma said. That's why he sent me. You need to see what's on here. Daman clicked into the video folder and opened the first file. It was Trevor, talking, directly to the camera, like a vlog. Day 1 of Operation Get Rid of Lisa, he said. The timestamp was from nearly a year ago, right after I moved in. Dad thinks he wants to be with her, but I know better. No one replaces Mom. My stomach turned. Daman clicked through more files. Trevor had documented everything. Planting. The cameras. Messing up my chores. Rehearsing what to say to turn Daman against me. There were dozens of videos. Months of planning. Jesus, Daman whispered, pale. He planned this from the start. Karma nodded grimly. There's more. Check the notebook labeled Phase 2. The notebook laid it all out, every twisted step Trevor planned to take next. He had an entire scheme mapped out. Plant drugs in my car and tip off hospital security. He'd even researched how nurses get drug tested and what substances would get me fired on the spot. There were notes about hiring someone to hack my email to send fake resignation letters to hospital leadership. But the most terrifying part? A section labeled Last Resort. Under it, Trevor had written, if nothing else works, accident at work. Nurses handle dangerous meds all the time. One mistake with the wrong patient. I felt sick. This wasn't just a jealous, angry kid acting out anymore. He was actually plotting to destroy my career, maybe even hurt a patient. We have to call the police, I said, my voice shaking. Damien was already pulling out his phone when it buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his face changed. It's Trevor. He says he's coming home to talk. I quickly stuffed all the evidence back into the tote bag. We need to hide this. If he finds out we saw it. No, Damien cut me off. No more hiding. No more pretending. We're confronting him with everything. I stared at him. Are you sure? What if he gets violent? Karma cleared her throat. Charles is on his way too. He'll be here in 10 minutes. Damien's jaw was set. I'd never seen him look like that. Trevor needs to face this. All of it. The next few minutes were a blur of scanning and copying the worst of the evidence, just in case Trevor tried to destroy the originals. I texted my sister Jen to come over too. More witnesses couldn't hurt. Trevor showed up about 20 minutes later. He looked awful, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Dad, I've been thinking... He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the laptop and notebook spread across the table. His eyes flicked from Karma to the evidence. What is this? You tell us, Damien said, eerily calm. Operation Get Rid of Lisa, Phase 2, Last Resort. Want to explain what all that means? Trevor's face shifted. Shock, then anger, then a forced innocence. Those are just stories I was writing. Fiction. For a creative writing class I was thinking about taking. Before Damien could respond, the front door opened again. Charles and Jen walked in at the same time. Trevor's expression turned bitter. So this is an ambush? You're all ganging up on me over some stupid writing exercise? Damien clicked play on one of the videos. Trevor's voice filled the room. Day 47. Dad actually believed me when I said Lisa planted the cameras herself. What an idiot. He's so desperate to think I'm still his perfect little boy. Trevor lunged for the laptop, but Charles caught his arm. Enough, Trevor. It's over. What happened next, none of us expected. Trevor started crying. Real, body-shaking sobs. Not the fake kind we'd seen before. He collapsed into a chair, face buried in his hands. She was trying to replace Mom, he sobbed. Everyone was forgetting Mom. Moving on like she never existed. Dad was happy without her. It wasn't right. The room was silent, except for his crying. Damien looked heartbroken. He stepped forward but froze when I grabbed his arm. This could still be a trick, I whispered. Trevor, Damien finally said, your mom would be horrified by what you've done. She raised you better than this. You don't know that, Trevor snapped. She's gone. Nobody knows what she'd think. I do, Charles said softly. Julie was my sister, and she'd be disappointed that you're using her memory to hurt people. Trevor's sobs faded into hiccups. He looked around, saw he wasn't getting the sympathy he wanted, and his face hardened again. Whatever. None of you get it. I'm out of here. He stood up, but Damien blocked his path. No, you're not. We're not done. Trevor tried to push past him, but Damien didn't move. Move, Dad. Not until we figure this out. You need help. Real help. Trevor laughed, this bitter, hollow sound. Help? You think a therapist is going to fix this? Nothing's going to bring Mom back. Nothing will make me okay with you replacing her. I'm not trying to replace your mother, I said, finally speaking directly to him. I never was. Trevor turned to me, eyes narrowed. Right. You just moved into her house, slept in her bed, and tried to mother her son. No, I interrupted. I moved into Damien's house. I sleep in Damien's bed. And I never tried to be your mother. I tried to be your friend, but you're an adult now. Trevor blinked, like that idea had never crossed his mind. Damien spoke again. You have two choices. You commit to serious therapy, no faking, no going through the motions, or I take this to the police. You wouldn't, Trevor scoffed. Your own son? To protect my wife from having drugs planted in her car? To stop you from possibly hurting patients? Damien's voice was firm. Yes, I would. I love you, Trevor, but I won't let you hurt anyone else. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then Trevor's shoulders dropped. Fine, he muttered. I'll go to therapy. We spent the next 2 hours hashing out a plan. Trevor would live with Charles and Karma, who already had security cameras installed. Therapy 3 times a week. Damien would pay, but Trevor had to get a job to contribute. We'd reassess in 3 months. Before Trevor left with Charles and Karma, Damien pulled him aside. I don't know what they said, but when they came back, Trevor wouldn't meet my eyes. At the door, he paused and muttered something that might have been sorry before walking out. Once everyone was gone, Damien and I collapsed onto the couch in silence. I wasn't naive enough to think that one confrontation solved everything, but it felt like a turning point. Thank you, Damien said for not giving up on me, even when I couldn't see what was happening. I almost did, I admitted, more than once. He nodded. I wouldn't have blamed you. He took my hand. We've got a lot to work through, my enabling, the trust issues, all of it. It's been 6 months since that night. Trevor's kept up with therapy, for the most part. Some weeks are better than others. He got a job at a tech repair shop, and surprisingly, he likes it. He's still living with Charles and Karma, which honestly is for the best. Damien and I started couples therapy along with his individual sessions. It's helped a lot. 2 months ago, Trevor asked to meet for coffee, just the two of us. Damien was nervous, but I agreed. It was awkward at first, but eventually, Trevor cleared his throat and said his therapist thought he should apologize. It wasn't a perfect apology. He still threw in some comments about how I hadn't made it easy, but it was a start. Last week, we all had dinner together, for the first time since everything exploded. No drama, no lies. Just a slightly uncomfortable meal with a few moments of actual normal conversation. Baby steps. I don't know if Trevor and I will ever have a good relationship. Too much has happened. But I know Damien finally sees things clearly. And that's what I needed most. Sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't stood my ground about the Xbox? What if Karma hadn't brought the notebooks? What if Damien hadn't finally believed me? I like to think we'd have found our way here eventually. But honestly, I don't know. What I do know is this. Our home is finally peaceful. No secret. Cameras, no sabotage, no walking on eggshells. Just Damien and me, rebuilding what Trevor tried to tear apart. Turns out, I didn't need to manifest a perfect man. I just needed one willing to grow and change when it mattered.